Thank you for joining me for Shaman Talk on the topic of sleep paralysis. Please do like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not done so. You can also follow me on Facebook at ShamanTalk, Hmong Shamanism. This topic is not one that is easily talked about just because of the forces involved. In doing this video alone, I can sense forces that are not wanting me to discuss this topic because talking about them weakens them, especially if people become more aware of their sources and where they come from. Then they become vulnerable to humans, just as humans are vulnerable to them. But I will discuss this topic because I feel that a lot of unknowns and what we don't understand elicits fear, and no one should have to live in fear. We only fear what we cannot see, cannot understand, cannot fight against. But please do understand that demonic entities are weak against you if you can see them, if you can fight them, and if you can rise up against them. So please don't fear them. They will weaken if you can understand that these dark forces are only strong because you allow them to be against your inability to see them. Many people experience sleep paralysis amongst other symptoms of supernatural phenomena that are unexplainable. And science falls short of being able to explain exactly what these phenomena entails. Scientists cannot even begin to explain the experiences of a shaman, so it's just not possible for them to also be able to explain sleep paralysis, as these occurrences are linked to spirituality. Some people will choose to believe the idea that sleep paralysis is caused by sleep deprivation and a state of consciousness where the body has given out, but the consciousness is still awake. The body is supposed to be paralyzed, so the individual does not act out what they are dreaming. Well, there are people who experience sleepwalking, where the individual is still dreaming, but the body is up and moving around. These individuals do not experience fear during the entire time they are walking around and talking as if they were awake, only to find out they are still asleep. This is because when they are dreaming and sleepwalking, they are not being attacked by demonic entities. Therefore, the individual can move around as they are sleeping and dreaming. However, during a sleep paralysis episode, the individual is paralyzed and cannot move at all. They are not hallucinating, but are actually seeing dark figures and demonic figures who exist in that dimensional space. The soul spirit travels through dreams, and during this state, the individual is in fact connected to his higher consciousness and can see and feel the spiritual energies of other things that are out there in that dream state. The only thing is that the human being who is experiencing sleep paralysis does not have access to protection. He cannot shield his spirit, and he cannot protect his soul from the dark energy that attempts to overcome him. From a shamanic and spiritual perspective, these so-called hallucinations are actually spiritual experiences that are allowing you to experience dark entities and demonic attempts to engulf your energy and to attack you. You are not the only victim, so these demonic entities travel around, attacking one person to the next. Sometimes you will notice that you don't have an encounter for weeks or months. Sometimes, if you are lucky, it's years before you encounter another episode. As I said, the reason is because you are not the only victim. These demonic entities travel and latch onto many human souls, relentlessly attacking those who are weak and making fewer rounds to those who are strong. How do you protect yourself against these forces of darkness? First of all, most people who experience sleep paralysis are often characterized by being spiritually sensitive, spiritually imbalanced, and or having a shamanic spiritual calling. Most of the time, your first encounter may be during a time when you were mentally vulnerable, making you spiritually vulnerable. Sometimes it may be because you were sleeping in an unfamiliar or a new setting that may have uncleansed energies. Most of you may have experienced your first encounter during times that you were vulnerable, such as during adolescence or other instances where you may have experienced trauma. In order to protect yourself, you have to be able to connect to your higher self. You may also call upon the forces of heaven to shield and protect you, to fend off the dark entities, and to remove it from attacking you. Don't accept defeat, because that's exactly what it's wanting you to do. To accept defeat, to accept it, and to give an excuse for it so that you can accept it as being normal for you. It is not normal, and therefore, please do not allow these demonic forces to force fear upon you. Unfortunately, I am unable to give you a simple solution. I wish I can offer a remedy that will free you from this darkness, but I cannot. I have never experienced sleep paralysis myself, but I understand exactly what it is, and I give those of you who have to live with this so much credit for your courage, your bravery, and your will to move forward. I will share my experiences with you, and hopefully it will give you insight into what your experience may mean for you. In my previous life, before I became a shaman, I knew people who experienced sleep paralysis, and it seems and is described as something very terrifying. But one can never know unless it is experienced firsthand. Many years after I became a shaman, I experienced what is an attempt of sleep paralysis or attempt to attack me. During this episode, I am still sleeping, but the emergence of what is dark and demonic awakens the consciousness. So it is not that you are awake while your body is still sleeping. What's really happening is that the emergence of this entity evokes your consciousness to wake up, and that is why you become aware. You feel its energy and its presence. Your spiritual energy feels it and is already shaken by it, that it wakes you up. It knows that another presence has invaded its space. During this instance, I felt it emerge, but before it could even attempt to step into my space, my spiritual guides already removed it. As I became aware and woke up, I felt the shadows without having to even witness it, and I felt it being sucked away. Consequently, what I felt was a brief moment of what would have been fear. It was as if fear was a living being, and I felt it being lifted away, that I never experienced it. But I felt how close it was and how it almost enveloped itself onto me. As I awakened and felt both the forces of darkness and the forces of fear being sucked away and lifted from my space. I knew what was happening, and at that moment, I felt my guides' powerful forces at play. They intercepted the event before it had a chance to occur. This happened to me twice. This was the second time. The first time it happened, I felt an emergence, and even before I knew what was happening, my spiritual guides intercepted and knocked the dark entity away before I even had a chance to try anything. How do I know? How am I aware of this? In that instance, when that happens, when my spiritual guide stepped in, it woke me up. And in that moment, I could feel the circumstances that were about to happen. And so I knew what it was. And these two experiences gave me insight into what sleep paralysis is, how to prevent it, and why it happens. Consider that in every occurrence, the description is the same. The forces that causes this deep fear is always associated with a demonic entity, an old hag, a dark figure, and so on. This occurs across different cultures, and the description is always the same. This is because the entity that causes sleep paralysis is the same type of darkness and comes from the same plane in space. You may try a number of things to help block the entity from returning, but the efficacy of these rituals will vary depending on your vibrations and your access to your higher self. If you can better connect with your higher self, these rituals will remain intact and protect you better. If your vibrations are lower and you are disconnected from your higher self, then the efficacy of these rituals will be less effective. A few things to try are to use the sword as a protective measure around your bed, your bedroom door, and on your bed. You can mark an X onto your bed and on the floor of your bedroom to ward off impurities. You are marking 4 corners of your room, 4 directions, and 4 dimensions. You will also need to mark your bed, remove all connections to all 4 dimensions, and to release your energy onto your body so that you will recognize any forces other than your own. This will awaken your consciousness and allow your higher self to fight off any dark forces without waking you up at first. Keep a sword next to you. Direct it to return and destroy all forces that attempts to trespass against you while you are sleeping. Enable the sword by directing it to have life, to have power, to have spiritual energy, and to have a role to protect you. You might want 2 swords on both sides of your bed next to you. Do not use knives that are sharp. Please only use ones that are dull and will not cut you in case you touch them in your sleep. You may use butter knives. They will work great. Another solution is to pray before you go to bed every night. Pray to God and ask Him to protect and watch over you while you are sleeping. You can say something like this: Dear God, please watch over my physical form, my spiritual form, and my earthling form as I lay myself to sleep. Please protect me, my spiritual energy, and my existence. Shield me and my mind, my body, my spiritual form, from all that is not pure and all that attempts to harm me. Do not allow any trespassers to bypass the swords that lay next to me. Give me strength, clear my body and my mind of negativity, and remove all that is uncleansed from my space, my body, and my spirit. Please protect me from all harm. Amen. This is a prayer that you can say before you go to sleep every night. That way it gives efficacy to your prayer, okay? You may also try wearing the little red sacks. These are most effective when you pair it with a spiritual ritual to enhance them by activating the spiritual auras of the herbs within those little red sacks. A shaman who has nanchua or herbal medicine spiritual guides may or may not be able to do this. It just depends on what kind of spiritual guides he or she has. These are just a few things you can do to try and shield you from these nightmares. But if you find that these occurrences are still happening, then you will want to seek out a shaman to help you. You have a spirit within you. Your spiritual energy is only weak because you allow it to be weak. Your spiritual energy is only weak because you believe you have no power. Meditate to release that fear, to clear negativity from you, to accept the power within yourself. To protect yourself, do not meditate to connect to other energies other than your higher self. Empower your spiritual energy by increasing your vibrations. Understand that fear only has power because you give it power. When you believe that there is more power within you, and that fear is only there because you believe the entity is stronger than you. Render it powerless. Remove all powers from it, and you will start to see that your powers are greater than you think. Thank you for joining me. If you have any questions or comments, please comment below. Until next time.